We are living through one of the biggest changes in history. Technology and work are changing, and so are we. Every day, new technology reshapes our lives, often faster than we can understand it. Grasp what's happening, what it means for you, and how stay ahead. Welcome to The Future Was Yesterday, a podcast where we talk with the leaders who are reshaping the world of work. Because the future isn't coming, it's already here.
Welcome to The Future Was Yesterday. To talk about the changes this pivotal moment is bringing to our world, but specifically for those looking to fulfilling the dream of independence and become part of the future of work, I want to present my guest today, Bobby Casey, an entrepreneur, tax attorney, and global structuring strategist who helps founders, real estate investors, and digital nomads to protect assets, minimize taxes, and operate business designed for genuine location independence. Welcome to The Future Was Yesterday, and thank you for being here. Bobby is an international man with experience in several countries, but luckily for us, with a lot of experience in Latvia and the Baltics and Northern Europe. So we hope that we are going to squeeze his brain and get some practical advice for our region. And first of all, I would like to ask you about your business, Business Anywhere. What is the Business Anywhere? What is doing, and how you are helping people with that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just give a quick little history to it. Basically, I've been doing consulting, tax residency, company structure, and asset protection consulting for more than 20 years, 20, and I guess 24, 25 years at this point. And Business Anywhere was basically a spinoff kind of the consulting practice because over time, we were recommending clients to do certain things, for example, registering companies or opening virtual mailboxes or setting up trusts or, banking and that sort of thing, merchant processing. And over time, we were referring people out to partners that did these sorts of things. And being a lifelong entrepreneur, I decided I was tired of referring people to other companies. And I just started the company that do these sorts of things. So Business Anywhere is a spinoff of that. It originally got started with the idea that with my consulting practice, we had registered so many companies in the US for clients. We actually, kind of funny, but actually it's, I jokingly call it a story of laziness. Basically, when we got tired of all the renewals that we had to process on a monthly basis, we registered a lot of US companies for clients, and the renewals got to be quite tedious. And so I hired a software developer to build a software platform to automate the renewals for us. And so we built the software platform so that our clients' companies would automatically renew and automatically file their annual reports with the Secretary of State every year. And then I decided, actually, that's probably a pretty good business idea by itself. So that's how Business Anywhere got started. So now that's one of the things we do with Business Anywhere is we automate your state compliance and that sort of thing. So Business Anywhere, what we do U.S. company formation, a registered agent service, EIN and ITIN applications, your tax ID numbers. We have a virtual mailbox service in the U.S. We help with bank account openings, bookkeeping, tax filings, trademarks, basically everything when it comes to getting your business started. And the way it kind of started is because our client in our consulting practice, our clients are predominantly location independent entrepreneurs that live outside of their home country. A lot of, I'm sure you probably know the term digital nomad. So a lot of digital nomads, I prefer location independent entrepreneur. It's just a longer word, but a bit more specific. And we have a lot of digital nomad clients. And basically through my consulting, we found that for the vast majority of digital nomad entrepreneurs, a US LLC in most, I would say greater than 90% of the cases, a US LLC is the best company structure for the vast majority of them. So that's why we kind of focused on the US market for company structure, but I don't want to say exclusively, but we work heavily with location independent entrepreneurs, helping them get their company started remotely, bank accounts, tax IDs, and virtual addresses, and that sort of thing.
This is very, very interesting and, of course, very relevant. And you know what is specifically very interesting to me to listen is, or to try to understand in the journey for a person who would like to be or become a digital nomad. What is first, the chicken or the egg? First, creating your business at home with the idea to become independent and operate abroad? Or is the other way around, that you try to explore and go out of your comfort zone, and then you realize that you could bring some service or be of service to the place where you are living now, and so you need to form a company?
So, I mean, I think that really depends on you as the founder and what your goals are and what your idea is there. The Let's call it the digital nomad movement, so to speak. In my opinion, it really started around, I think it was 2004 or five. I think you're probably old enough to remember when Skype started. Skype was a new thing. I think it was 2004 or five when Skype was created. You know, you had a couple of Estonian guys created this really weird, platform where you could call people and do video chats online. Well, prior to Skype, it was very difficult for people to have location independent businesses, at least small businesses or freelancers, solopreneurs. And it was very difficult for the small guy to do that because it was pretty cost prohibitive to do a lot of that. You know, you would travel. Like I remember back in probably 2000 or seven or something like that, before I was on Skype. I went to Russia, and I was in Russia, and to me, Skype was kind of the catalyst that kind of springboarded a lot of people into this remote workspace. And then probably, I bet you've read this book, and I'm sure many of your audience members have read the book. But the 4 Hour Work Week came out right about that time, or a little bit after the advent of Skype, and it just kind of gave people the idea that, hey, actually, that would be pretty cool if I can do my job remotely, and I can go work on the beach in Mexico, or I could go work in the mountains in Switzerland and go ski during the day and do my work at night or whatever. And it just kind of springboarded all these people to have all these ideas. So to your point, do you start the business, with the idea to make it global? I guess I understood that correctly. Or are you already like living abroad, starting a business to, target your local market? So either way, it's kind of a global mindset for business. It just depends on what kind of business you're in. So if like most digital nomads, in my experience, the vast majority of them, they have the ability to work anywhere. They tend to have clients kind of all over the place. They might target a particular audience. Like I have one client who he's digital marketing space, but he does digital marketing for like location-based businesses in the US. Think like plumbers or electricians or roofers or landscapers. But his business is completely global, and when I say global, I mean his clients are all in the US, but he has employees in Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia. And so the technology tools gives him the ability to do that. And I think this ties in well with the basically concept of your podcasting, the future of work, in that basically we now have this ability to do this. We have the choice. Like, I mean, I know you said, Cesar, you're from Mexico, but like when you were living in Mexico, I'm guessing, do you mind me asking which city?
Mexico City.
Mexico City. Okay. So when you were in Mexico City, if you, rewind, a few years ago, back when you were living there, probably still to this day, but most people live there, work there, they have a house or an apartment there, their local business is based there. But look now, you're sitting
Yeah.
in Latvia, doing your work, and your clients are all over the world. I'm guessing you probably have maybe VAs or team members in different countries. Maybe you target the Baltic market for your client base, but you have the ability to do it pretty much from anywhere. And I think, technology has made this possible for us. And this is absolutely the future of work. And one more thing I'll add is I wrote an article a few years ago, like during the middle of the COVID craziness, that COVID was actually the best thing to happen for humanity. Of course, I got a lot of hate mail on that. I ended up getting a few death threats on that, which was kind of fun. But I stand by it that I believe COVID was the best thing to happen because it gave people the understand, not only people, but also the companies they work for. It said, hey, well, like, I mean, you remember during COVID, even huge companies with 50,000 employees said, hey, you can't work in the office anymore. Go home, work from home.
Yeah.
And everyone said, wait, I can work from home. I can do this. And then they realized, actually, for the most part, I'm more productive working from home. I can work in my pajamas. I can go to lunch with my kid at school and take an hour off for lunch to hang out. I don't have to commute an hour to work every day, putting, miles or kilometers on my car, driving to and from work every day. My quality of life just dramatically improved. And this is absolutely the future of work. I mean, of course, some things, it's kind of hard to make a hamburger working remotely. It's kind of hard to fix your plumbing working remotely, but in service and service trades, a lot of service trades you can do completely online. So to me, this is the future.
No, absolutely, absolutely. It's definitely a little bit controversial, of course, that the detonator might have been the pandemic, no? Because a lot of these technologies, like Skype, you mentioned, already existed for several years before, and they were there, and we just didn't use them in the extent that we are using them now.
On a video chat and get your documents notarized. Now, almost every state in the U.S. offers remote online notary, and all of those legislative tasks.
Absolutely. Now you can buy a house here in Northern Europe and never meet the notary, never meet the other person, doing everything online, no? Because the authentication and identification signature is so advanced, no?
I'm selling a property, by the way, this week. I'm selling one of my properties in Latvia this week. I had one of my notary appointments this morning with the bank, and I have the other notary appointment on Wednesday with the seller and the notary and the lawyer to finalize the contract. And I'm not in Latvia. I'm in the U.S. right now for at least another couple of weeks, but I'm doing it completely remotely. And yeah, none of this was even possible COVID. Pre-COVID, I would have had to have flown back to Latvia and meet with the notary in person to sign the documents because it wasn't even a thing.
Yeah, exactly.
I forgot. 21, I think, is when you were able to do these types of transactions.
And
Digital notary.
touching a little bit on that, I would like to ask you, in your experience, because you have seen a lot of businesses, a lot of different type of companies that you had helped to create. Is that what they are doing? And I think what they are doing might be outside of what is normal for a company that is locally based to do. And I don't know if in the US, it's starting to be normal that the services that are offered by X or Y are coming from a person that is having its company, that it's a digital nomad, not that it's this week in Brazil, next week in Switzerland, like you were mentioned. It's becoming something like that is routine, or is still something?
I think every day it becomes more and more and more routine. I had a call last week. I'm sure you've heard of the fintech company, Revolut.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty big now. Revolut's pretty big. Depending on the country, they're either an EMI or a bank in different countries. Like in Europe, they're a bank out of Lithuania. In the UK, they're a bank.
Yes.
In the US, they're still a fintech, EMI. Anyway, I had a partner call with Revolut last week, and the guy I talked to is the director of their US operations, and he was working from home in Austin, Texas. And more normalized now. I don't think people, like maybe 10 years ago, if you had a call with somebody, it was a little bit weird that if you had a call, like a business call, and the person is sitting around in their house and they tell you, oh yeah, I'm working from home. I think it was a bit strange, maybe even looked a little less professional, but
in my own experience, the last couple of years had been a transformation, because at the beginning, when we started the company, it was very difficult even to explain what are we doing, how are we working, and how the accountant could fit certain things that we are doing. And now it's totally another situation. No, it's totally not super easy, not totally straightforward, but it's a big difference that a couple of years ago comparing.
This is a funny anecdote, but I booked a plane ticket. This was probably 10 or 12 years ago. I booked a plane ticket on Southwest Airlines in the US. Turns out the booking agent that I was talking to on the phone, normally I would just book it online, but I had some problem with the ticket and I had to call somebody. And the booking agent I got on the phone was working from home. And I remember the lady lived in Utah. She lived just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. Because I just asked her, I'm like, hey, by the way, are you working from home? Because I heard somewhere that Southwest booking agents work from home. And yeah, we got to talking about her work. And she goes, yeah, she went in to the Southwest office to train for a couple weeks. And then they sent her home and they gave her basically tools like a computer, a printer, scanner, a headset, and they like paid for the high speed internet in their house. And that was it. She works from home. And apparently Southwest Airlines has been doing this for more than a decade. Like their booking agents, almost all of them work from home now.
Yeah.
And have been for a long time.
A conversation that we had last year with another of the guests, we were talking about the changes in mentality and the organizational culture in the business in Europe and the US in the last 15, 20 years. And after this conversation, one of the comments was that in our youth, that was the 90s, early 2000s, we were still thinking that freedom was to own your own car and drive away and just go ride with your car. That was freedom for us, no? And now freedom is digital skills that allows you to go further than you could imagine with your car 15, 20 years ago. No?
Yeah, I've got a high school. My youngest son he's graduating high school this year, and the day after graduation, him and I are flying to Europe. We're traveling all over Europe for the summer. He already works, by the way. He works online, completely remotely, traveling as soon as he graduates. The day after he finishes high school, we're traveling around in Europe. Then we're going, I think in the autumn, we're going to like New Zealand and Australia. And actually we're going to Mexico.
Amazing.
And he can work completely on.
And now talking about the types of works or the types of companies that you help to create, what is the most common kind of service or product that you see that people offer for this kind of, how you sell independent, located?
The vast majority, or we can just say digital nomads, it's pretty easy, but the vast majority of our digital nomad clients register Wyoming LLCs. Now, some people like to do Delaware because maybe they read online that's a little bit better. There are some benefits to Delaware in a few narrow cases, but for the vast majority, like 95% of people, Wyoming is a better jurisdiction for registering your company. And like let's talk about U.S. people versus non-U.S. people, because U.S. people have a different tax situation than basically everyone else in the world when it comes to like digital nomads, because Americans, even when they move abroad and they live in a different country, they still have to file and pay tax in the U.S. Now, there are some tax loopholes for Americans, with foreign earned income exclusion and foreign tax credit and some other possibilities there. So maybe they don't have a big tax burden, but they still have a tax filing option. Whereas if you're a non-American, pick the nationality, it doesn't matter. Let's say you're, Venezuelan.
No.
Very relevant today, right? So you're a Venezuelan that's left Venezuela and you have an online business, let's say a SaaS product, software as a service product, and it operates completely in the cloud, completely online. Maybe you've got some software developers, let's say, I don't know, in Serbia, and maybe you've got some customer service support people in, I don't know, let's say the Philippines. And you're Venezuelan, and you're a digital nomad, and you're like traveling around the world, and you're living in one country for maybe a month or two, another place for a month or two, like that. Well, a US LLC is perfect for that because number one, you're not going to have any US tax obligation because you don't actually have any what we call US source income. So you don't have any income that's directly tied to what's called ECI, or effectively connected income to a US trade or business. Because even though the company is based in the US, maybe you have Stripe in the US, maybe you have a bank account in the US, it doesn't matter because you're not physically doing your work in the US. You don't have an office there. You don't have a warehouse there. You're not selling physical goods being delivered to US clients. You're selling in the cloud to anybody who lands on your website. And physically, your work is being performed in Serbia and the Philippines, for example. And then you personally are the owner and manager of that company. That's what's called mind and management. And there's no mind and management of the company in the US. Mind and management could be in Mexico for a couple of months, maybe in Brazil for a month or two, maybe in Latvia for a couple of months, like that. So you don't have any tax obligation in the US. So you could actually run your company without paying any US tax whatsoever on that company. And then if you as an individual do not have tax residency in any country. So using that example I just gave, a Venezuelan digital nomad who's living a month or two here and there, he's probably not becoming a tax resident in any one jurisdiction. So he doesn't have a tax residency anymore. So he basically is running his business completely tax-free. Well, I say tax-free, I mean income tax-free. He's still paying things like VAT and sales tax and fuel tax and, all these consumption taxes. It's hard to avoid that unless you live in a cave, I guess. But, and then the other thing, like let's say, just using you, Caesar, as an example, you're a Mexican living in Latvia. It could make sense for you as well, because you would actually you could bill your clients from a U.S. company and avoid VAT. And then any income you draw out of that LLC, because it's a pass-through, is treated like ordinary income tax in Latvia. So, because I assume you're a tax resident there.
Yeah.
So it makes it easy for you just to pay ordinary income tax as an individual. And then it might make it easier for you to run your business than dealing with some of the complexities and compliance of dealing with a Latvian registered company, like the monthly filings, VAT registration and stuff.
You just kind of almost answered my next question, because I wanted to ask, from your point of view and your experience, what you think about the if you know about the Estonian e-residence for opening a company.
I know a lot about it. Actually, I was one of the very first e-residents in Estonia back in 2010, I think, 10 or 11, whenever it first came out. I was literally in the first, within the first month, I had my e-residency. I've been launching the program. I did it back when you had to go to the police station in Tallinn to apply and get your picture taken. And then I think like 2 years or a year or two after that, you could do it at an embassy. But I did it when it had to be done in person. And I had an Estonian company for a while, but my company in Estonia, we actually had a physical location in Estonia at the time. I was a partner in a company there, and we had a building and everything, actually based in Tartu. And for me, at that time, it made sense because I had a physical connection to Estonia. Like I actually had a location there with people coming to work and equipment and all this stuff happening. I think Estonia did a really good job of marketing it towards the digital nomad audience. However, it is generally a pretty terrible option for most digital nomads. And when I say that, it doesn't mean it's not a workable solution. What I mean by it being terrible, I mean there are generally much better options than an Estonian company. So first of all, you can get e-residency. Sure, you can do it at an embassy without having to go to Estonia. Great. You can pick up your card. Great. You can get the little chip reader, plug it in. You can go online, pay your money, register your company. No problem. You can even do your tax filings every month, your VAT and your income tax. And those are two separate filings. They have to be done monthly. If you are 1 day late, you get hit starting 1 day late, you get hit with fines in Estonia. Ask me how I know. And you have to do both, if you're VAT registered, you have to do both the VAT and the income tax filing. And what we learned also, even though they promote it as very foreigner friendly, there's a lot of sections on the Estonian website about tax related things that are not in English. And I don't speak Estonian. And my Russian is not good enough to get by on a tax website. It's too complicated. So basically that means you don't really have a choice, but you have to hire an Estonian accountant to deal with it for you so they can translate everything for you properly and do your proper filing. So that just adds an additional cost, another couple hundred, 200-300 euros a month So it raises your costs on it. And the other thing is you will pay tax on profit distributions. Now, they do have a nice thing where you don't have to pay tax on retained earnings in the company, but you will have to pay, there's a little bit of a scale there, but approximately 20% tax on profit distributions. Now, early on, when Estonia first launched that Estonian company tax regime and the e-Residency, there was a lot of promoters out there talking about how if you weren't an Estonian resident, then you didn't have to pay the tax in Estonia, the company profits tax, that you only paid it as the individual when you received the profit distribution as the individual. However, that's not really the case. You're supposed to pay it. So, for example, if you're the owner of an Estonian company and the company makes 100,000 euros and you are, Venezuelan living in Brazil, well, if you pay yourself 100,000 euros from the profit of the company, you're supposed to pay 20,000 euros to Estonia in a company profits tax. So, and there was a lot of people early on that were promoting it saying, oh, you don't have to pay the company profits tax because you're not an Estonian physical, you're not actually an Estonian tax resident. And so then there's been some tax battles with the Estonian tax office. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, the Estonian tax office is extremely aggressive. They will come after you even for €1. And it's just not really the ideal situation for digital nomads. It's a lot of compliance headaches. You're going to have a regular bookkeeper or accountant to do your filings for you. And you are actually going to have to pay tax. And then it can create tax complications if you have tax residency in another country with double taxation agreements and tax treaties and that sort of thing. Whereas for the vast majority of digital nomads, a US LLC like Wyoming or Delaware or New Mexico or whatever, you have one filing you have to do once a year. It's actually 2 forms. It's total of about 4 pages. You have to do one time a year. Unless you have what we call ECI or effectively connected income to a U.S. trade or business, unless you have ECI, there's no tax obligation in the U.S. If you do have a tax obligation, that would be you would have more serious connection to the U.S. anyway. Like you would have an office there. You would have employees where you're withholding payroll tax on. Maybe you have a warehouse and you're selling, like maybe you have an e-commerce store and you have your warehouse of your goods in the U.S. In that case, yes, you do have a tax obligation in the U.S. But in my experience, the vast majority of digital nomads, they're doing digital products, consulting, coaching, software, digital download products, something virtual in the cloud, like service-based or digital product type businesses. That's what the vast majority of them are doing. And in that case, Estonia looks very unattractive because also, on top of that, you're going to have to charge all your clients VAT. Whereas with a U.S. company, you do not, because there's no requirement to charge VAT for a digital product sold from the U.S.
And you again read my mind because I wanted to ask you precisely the practical advice for someone who would like to start their business. And I think you just gave a lot of pearls for people that it's looking to start a business. And unfortunately, time is.
By the way, I didn't even mention. I'll mention quickly, but I didn't even mention it before. But the U.S. company is going to cost you, let's say, half or less than half what it costs to set up and run an Estonian company. That, to me, that's just the icing on the cake. That's not even the most important factor. But the cost of it is about half or less than half the Estonian.
If there are people listening to us now who would like to contact you to get to know more about your business or get a consultation, how they can find you?
The best way to reach us is just through our website, Business Anywhere.
Okay, we're going to put the link in the comments below. And I just want to say thank you very much, Bobby. We are almost out of time, but I appreciate very much your time, your expertise, your thoughts. But I want to ask you a last question before saying goodbye. With everything that we are seeing regarding technology and how things are changing for working remotely, is there any transformation that you would like to see becoming reality by the end of the decade?
Oh, I mean, that's a tough question because, I mean, we've got basically some new AI generational leap about every 3 weeks now, it seems like there's something new with AI that comes up like at least once a month that everybody like at that moment is like, oh my God, I never foresaw that happening. There's some brilliant entrepreneur that's come up with this new tool to use for AI or a new AI platform that's doing something new. Honestly, I don't think I'm smart enough to figure out like those types of things, only because things are moving so quickly. This is not like the industrial age anymore. The industrial age, you could predict like decades into the future, like how things were going to work and like planning for budgeting and R&D and stuff like that. Now, how can you do that? How can you budget for things like you don't even know if if you're going to need customer service employees, 6 months from now.
Yeah.
Even right now, a lot of that can be outsourced completely to AI agents. Not all of it, but 6 months from now, maybe. Like, who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's
One thing
wonderful.
one thing I do know is if you're running a business right now and you're not utilizing AI and you're not learning how to do it and you're not taking advantage of the different AI tools, you're probably not going to be in business a year from now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Now you can ask Mr. Casey for his advice, and you are going to become a very happy and wealthy individual. Thank you very much, Bobby, for your time. And thanks to a couple of listeners. Remember, we learn from each other. I wish you agency and a wonderful day. And remember that the future was yesterday.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hi, this episode is brought to you by Sala. Building for the future shouldn't feel overwhelming. Sala is an all-in-one solution designed to support you at every stage. From shaping an idea to AI-powered customer service. But Sala don't just focus on technology. They help you make sense of it and actually use it in a way that works for you. If you're looking to grow, adapt, or future-proof your business, check out Sala.